I'm Kate Richbourg, and this is Microtorch Basics. So, in this lesson, you guys, I am going to remove your fear of using the torch, because that's why you're here, right? You want to learn all about the torch and how it works. So let's get right down to it. Now, you may be seeing this handsome red guy right here to my side. This is a fire extinguisher. And since I am going to be turning these torches on during this lesson, I always like to have a fire extinguisher nearby. We're actually going to talk a little bit more about safety concerns in a later lesson, but right now I'm just going to put our friend the fire extinguisher right down here by my side just in case I need it. So we'll see you later, or hopefully we won't see him later. All right. Here's the torches. Now, these types of torches are always referred to as butane microtorches. Microtorches because they're small, and butane because that's the fuel that we use to power them up. So I'm going to start by talking about this torch right here. This is the Blazer microtorch. And the Blazer torch is a terrific torch to have in your arsenal, but the one thing I want to point out is that this Blazer does not have a safety lock on it. So if you have a microtorch that doesn't have a safety, you want to make sure and keep it out of any, like if you have kids or, I don't know, little inquiring minds, you don't want those guys to get their hands on this torch because it'll be pretty easy for them to turn it on. So make sure that you secure this safely in a safe location when you're not using it. But the good thing about having a torch that doesn't have a safety is it's super easy to turn on. So as always, before I ever turn on my torch, I always put on my safety glasses because I can't replace my eyes if something happens to them. So let's talk about the mechanics of this torch. And you know, I do want to mention that all microtorches, they kind of work the same way. I am going to point out some of the differences between these two, so you'll have a pretty good primer about how both of these work, and then you can relate them to maybe some torches that you might already have, or if you're going to go out and purchase one of your own for your own projects. Okay, microtorch, here we go. Microtorches usually come with a base on them, and in order to fill the torch, usually you have to pull the base off like this and set it aside. But you know what? Hang on to that base because you don't want to lose it, because it's easy to put your torch down without the base and just knock it over. The base adds a lot of stability, so you want to try and hang on to it and keep it with your torch. But we actually need to have it off because we're going to fill it. And the fuel that you use, like I mentioned before, is butane. Now, you want to use a butane that is a clean fuel. Usually we recommend using butane that's triple refined, but honestly, sometimes I can't always find triple refined fuel, so I just pick up a butane at the hardware store and use it to fill my torch. And you know, this torch that I have on the table in front of me is probably about 10 years old, and I haven't had any trouble with it yet. So, you know, if you can find triple refined, awesome. If you can't, don't sweat it as much, okay? You'll be all right. So to fill, we're going to go ahead and invert the torch this way. Now, I recommend that you fill your torch in a well-ventilated area, which usually means I recommend stepping right outside and filling it that way. Because once the torch is filled, the butane is going to sputter a little bit right around the stem here. I mean, it's not going to emit a super amount of, you know, odors and gas and stuff like that. But again, it's always better to be safe than sorry. So go ahead and step outside when you fill up your torch. But I'm going to fill it up right now. You put the stem right in the little bottom receiving end there. Press down firmly, and the torch is filling. Now I usually count to about 10, but this torch is actually already pretty full, so you can hear how that just kind of sputtered a little bit. That's how I know it's been filled. So I'm going to remove my butane and set it aside. Flip over my torch and go ahead and set it back in its base. So now it's ready to turn on. Like I mentioned before, this torch doesn't have a safety, so it's really actually pretty easy to turn on. And you know, I recommend when you get your torch, or maybe you have a torch already, maybe you're watching this course and your torch is sitting right next to you and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get ready to turn it on. That's awesome. I think what you should do is commune with your torch as soon as you can so you really get the feel of how to use it. So I'm going to commune with this torch and show you how it works. I'm going to start the flow of butane by rotating this little knob forward, and you'll be able to hear it, just like that. And all I need to do is simply click the button, and the flame is on. That's all there is to this one. But if you'll notice, see how this flame is really loose here? It's not really a tight flame. That's not going to really solder much. So a lot of torches have a little collar here that you rotate so you make that flame a lot tighter, so it's ready for soldering. Now, the flame has different spots in the flame. Way out here, there's a really light flame. That's a very cool flame here. And back where you see that dark blue cone, back there, that is also a pretty cool part of the flame. The business end of this flame, the flame or the sweet spot of the flame, what we call the sweet spot, is right here at the tip of this bright blue cone. So when you're working and soldering, that's the part that you want to be touching your piece or be working around near your piece. So it's that tip of the bright blue cone right there. Now, to turn the torch off, if you know how to turn it on, you gotta turn it off too, right? With this guy, all you do is you stop the flow of the gas by rotating that knob right back. And then I always double check to make sure that there's no little residual flame left. But this has been completely turned off and it's ready to just be put aside here. Now remember, once you turn a torch on, the tip of the nozzle can be hot. So I want you to be careful after you've used your torch the first time you solder. I want you to place the torch out of harm's way. I'm right-handed, so usually when I'm finished soldering, I go ahead and I just set it with the nozzle away from me, pointing away from me, but easily reachable with my right hand so I can continue on and work on my pieces, okay? So this is the Blazer. Let me introduce you to the Max Flame torch. We've got this guy right over here. Now this guy is called the Max Flame because it does have a really big flame. Both of these torches, the Max Flame torch and the Blazer torch, both burn at 2,500 degrees. So they both have the same temperature of flame. But you'll notice when I turn this guy on that the path or the width of the flame is a lot larger. So it can cover more area as I'm heating. So I'll reserve the Blazer for my smaller projects, like the rings I'm wearing on my finger here. But maybe I'm doing a ring that's a little bit bigger, like the ring that's on my finger over here. That one I might go ahead and use the Max Flame for. Or if I'm using pieces that are larger than maybe, I don't know, like maybe like a 50-cent piece or something like that, or maybe a little more than an inch in diameter, then I'd pop it up here to my Max Flame. So let's take a look at how this Max Flame torch works. The Max Flame also has an ignition switch, but on the back, it also has a safety button. Okay, so I have to push that safety button down before I can pop the torch on. If the safety button isn't engaged, the flame won't turn on. So I pop the safety on, and I want to mention, by the way, the base does come off, and you can see I fill this torch the exact same way as we did the Blazer. You can see that little opening right in the bottom. It's this exact same thing, and most microtorches work that same way. So, engage the safety switch and click it on. Now, if I take my finger off the button, the flame goes off. So there's a little switch right here that when I push it, will lock the flame in place. So let's disengage the safety on this. And let's go ahead and pop the torch on. And let's use that little lever to lock the flame in place. Now on this side of the torch, we have a little lever that adjusts the flame. It adjusts it nice and low, and then, like a real jet engine, it goes really, really high. Same thing about the kind of the makeup of this flame. The cool blue interior of the flame, the hot sweet spot at the very point of the blue cone, and then cooler out here where the very, very end of where the heat is reaching. And I can hold my hand about right here, but I can still feel the warmth of the torch. So this is a pretty powerful torch here. Now, to turn this off, we're just going to do the same thing in reverse, you guys. I'm just going to go ahead and click this off. And that's it. All right. And we'll check, make sure there's no extra flame coming out, but the butane is off, and that's all she wrote. So pretty simple, manipulating these two. But you know what? What I find my students have the most trouble with is they're just afraid to turn the torch on. You know, they're afraid that they're gonna blow themselves up or blow their house up or blow their friends up or their pets or whatever it is, right? But really, these guys are pretty darn safe. Think of them as a large cigarette lighter almost, you know, it's just like a butane lighter. You put butane in the bottom, you click, and a flame comes out the front. They're just a lot bigger, okay? So you can't blow yourself up, you're not gonna set your house on fire, you're just gonna make sure that everything is really safe and controlled. And before you even get started on a project, what I want you to do is, some of you, like I said, may already have a torch at home. What I want you to do is get that torch out and start communing with it. Learn how to turn it on, turn it off. Practice, turn it on, turn it off, until you're really comfortable with doing that, right? Then, once you've done that, you'll be able to move on and wield that torch with confidence. Also, for this lesson, there's a course material that you can download and take a look at for reference. There's a couple of torch schematics on there, so it'll remind you about what we talked about in this lesson. And remember, you guys, you can always post your questions on the platform and chitty chat amongst yourselves about what torches you like, where you get your fuel, whatever it is you want to talk about that's torch related. So, in our next lesson, we are going to talk all about safety. We've given you some safety pointers here with these torches, but we're going to delve a little deeper because I want to make sure that your work environment and you're really using these guys in a safe and sane manner. So we'll see you then. And this is Kate Richbourg, and this is Microtorch Basics.